pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll with planet. Flight is downside, SPE off.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.
Alright, hello everybody, and welcome to some more live Starship testing coverage on NASASpaceflight. We're looking live at Boca Chica, Texas, where SpaceX is set to conduct some proof testing of that mystery Nosecone structure that we've been seeing next to SN15 for a while now. The road has been closed and the pad has been cleared, but no Starship SN15 testing is expected tonight. Instead, they are looking to do some proof testing with that structural test article, and it is possible that such a test could end in a test to destruction to find sort of the maximum limits of this thing. So we figured we should go live and see if something dramatic might happen at the end of a successful test tonight. So we will be live for tonight's testing. My name is Thomas Burkhardt. I am an editor, reporter for NASASpaceflight. I'm joined by a couple other members of the NASASpaceflight team. Of course, this camera feed is brought to you by none other than Mary at Boca Chica Gal, who is down there covering the test. We've also got the robot army for some additional camera views. Also on comms with me, we've got Michael Baylor in the studio. Michael, how you doing?
I'm doing well, and hopefully we will see something today. We are going live because we don't know what to expect, but we cannot guarantee this is going to be exciting. We can also not guarantee this is going to be boring. So the only way to find out is to stick with us and see what happens. I hope we're going live for something interesting. As we've said before, we like to set an expectation that when we go live it's for something exciting, but today we just don't know, and we don't want to miss something exciting. So we are going live just in case, the nose cone crumples or something exciting happens. So we're going to stay tuned. We don't know exactly what to expect, but hopefully we will see some action here this evening.
Absolutely, and I also believe lurking in the studio, don't know if he's going to talk so much, but I'll say his name just in case. Das, are you here with us and want to say a quick hi?
Yeah, I'm around. I'm hanging out, making sure all the lights are blinking.
Alright, there's Das as always, John Galloway. Appreciate you coming to hang out tonight. As always, since, like Michael said, we don't really know exactly what to expect, but we've got all our cameras pointed in the right direction, so if something dramatic happens, we're going to see it. In the meantime, though, we're also going to take this opportunity to do some good old question and answer like we always do on these Starship testing streams. So if you got a question about what we're doing today, what's coming up for Starship SN15, as far as just a brief overview, SN15 is set to make its test flight potentially later this week. However, we don't have any expectation that will happen tonight. Right now we're focusing on the structural test article, but we can give some other updates on the Starship testing program. So if you have questions about that or about the Nosecone structure kind of test article we're looking at right now, we can feel free to answer those too. So if you got those questions, throw them in the chat, tag us with @NASASpaceflight, and we'll try to have those conversations as well while we wait to see what SpaceX does tonight.
And then
Already
SN15 as I frantically tried to get a robot pointed at it, but SN15 is right next to that nose cone. It's not quite as close as it looks in this angle, but it's at the similar area of the launch facility.
Absolutely. As far as SN15 testing, there are additional closures scheduled for tomorrow and Friday. Really quick, Michael, what's the status of TFR? I know there's road closures tomorrow and Friday, just like the road closure that's going on right now. But what's the status of the flight restrictions? Because that's another key piece before we go to SN15 flight testing.
So there are TFRs last time I checked, and I'll check again right now for both Thursday and Friday, but we are not expecting a test flight tomorrow. Can you actually see it on this? I'm not sure if you can see the flight termination system installation point from this camera angle right here, but I can tell you that the flight termination system has not been installed yet. There's still some work to do before SN15 will fly.
And that includes FAA approval, which we know actually hasn't, at least as of earlier today, the FAA had not green-lighted the SN15 test flight just yet, still working through the final items on that. So there's not a whole lot of signs pointing to readiness for tomorrow, but potentially Friday might be more realistic. They do have some of the closures getting into place for those flights. So that's what we're expecting for an SN15 standpoint. But again, tonight we're looking at that structural test article to the right. I don't think it has like an SN designation or anything. Or what wasn't it the nose cone for SN12 at one point? Or am I making that up?
Yes, it is the SN12 nose cone. And
Alright, so if you want to... Yeah.
the actual SN12 tank section does not, well, it didn't actually get assembled. SN12
Right.
has been scrapped. It's not going to fly, but instead they are using its nose cone for this testing.
So, you could... Basically, we're here for SN12 testing, even though it's only the nose cone portion. So, we've already got some super chats coming into the queue and stuff like that. So, of course, we'll also get some non-super chat questions. But Musical Wolves kicking us off asking, is the nose cone design for SN20? So like we just touched on, this nose cone design is as current as SN12. Unless they went back and made some changes to it, which I guess they could have, I'm not sure. We don't really know if it's for SN20, the first orbital Starship, or anything like that, or if this is just some more generic testing. We're not sure exactly what they are testing today, other than it's some sort of structural load testing, is kind of what we can deduce based on how they set it up. But other than that, we don't really know any more specifics about what this test might be. We don't even know how they're going to test it, if they're going to pressurize it, fill it with some sort of propellant or fluid of some kind, or if they're just going to mechanically test it. We did see the cap of the nose cone has some attachment points where they could have put some hydraulic equipment on the inside. I believe we actually caught a glimpse of that. So there could just simply be hydraulic pressure that's going to test this nose cone tonight. So there's a lot of different options of what they might be doing tonight and what this test might be for. So don't know for sure any more details than that. Let's see. Modi Space Industries saying, alright, time to start a fight. Do Ares 1 fans or Ares 1 haters get to go to nose cone jail? Either way, Thomas's favorite pencil rocket, good. Modi Space, thanks for the super chat there. You know my vote, Ares 1 good. So appreciate the support, as always. Richard with a new membership, thanks for joining on, appreciate it. And then Jirwa with the Michael Collins quote, it's human nature to stretch, to go, to see, to understand. Exploration is not a choice, really, it's an imperative. Of course, rest in peace, Michael Collins, the command module pilot of Apollo 11 who passed away today, and everyone in the space community's thoughts, of course. Thank you, Jirwa, for the message there. Philip Whitehouse says it's great that this is happening on an evening when nothing else is happening in spaceflight. You know what? That's a very good point, Philip. For those who are not aware, there are 3 orbital launches scheduled for this evening. Arianespace is going to kick us off with the Vega rocket's return to flight mission, which is scheduled for 9:50 p.m. Eastern Time, and that'll be carrying a couple satellites. The main satellite is a French Earth observation satellite, and there's a couple secondary payloads on that. And then later in the evening, there will be the first module of the new Chinese modular space station, launching on a Chang'e 5B from Wenchang Satellite Launch Center. So that will come up at, hold on, I'm going to get the exact T0 really quick. It's 11:18 p.m. Eastern Time. And then shortly after that, at 11:44 p.m. Eastern Time tonight, a SpaceX Falcon 9 will lift off from Cape Canaveral Slick 40, Space Launch Complex 40, with the latest Starlink mission, Starlink V1L24. So 3 orbital missions on the books for tonight. Of course, NASASpaceflight will be live for that launch from Cape Canaveral. In fact, in about an hour here, if this test isn't done, I'm going to have to hop off to drive to Cape Canaveral. But we'll be live for that, of course. And so we'll keep you covered on all of those things. We've also, of course, got our regular news coverage of all 3 of those things over at NASASpaceflight.com.
I should note quickly, Thomas, they could be testing right now. We don't know. There's lots of pistons and whatnot that are going to be pushing and pulling against this thing, but it's really hard for us to know what's happening. I'm not sure if we're going to see any venting at all. They might be pressurizing it somewhat with some gaseous nitrogen. But the primary purpose of this test, I think, is to push and pull on it and whatnot. So, not really sure if we're going to see any visual indicators about a test happening until potentially it might fail. I did hear, not too definitive, but I did hear they might be testing this to failure. So there is a chance we may see it fail, and that might be a sign of a success, depending on at what point it failed. So just because you see it crumple today, if it crumples, does not necessarily mean that it was a bad test. That might be intentional. Right. I'm not entirely sure, but like we've seen at the previous structural test articles, they typically press them or proof them or torture them to failure, so no reason to think why they would not do the same with SN12's nose cone.
Exactly. David Nagy with the super chat says, "Rest in peace, Michael Collins, Apollo 11 command module pilot." Like we said earlier, absolutely. Thank you, David, and rest in peace, Mr. Collins. Got a question here from Rough Riders. Does this nose cone have hydraulic rams that push on the sides and underneath? Thanks for the stream. So we saw hydraulic equipment kind of go up into the nose cone. So we know there's some sort of mechanical sort of stress that's going to be part of this test at some point. And we think it's likely connected to that cap at the top of the nose cone to kind of pull it downward and force loads that way. But again, that's kind of just we can only speculate based on what we've seen, and there could be other factors to this test as well. So we don't really know any more detail than that. So that's why we're live here, and we're gonna watch it live with the rest of you and see exactly what happens. So
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to change camera angles again. I think I'm just going to ride on this scene where we can see as many different sides of the nose cone as we have available, because this thing could fail at any moment. We just don't know, and I don't want to be, switching to a different camera when it happens, because for static fire we get lots of warning about when a static fire is going to happen. But with this test, like we said a couple times now, it could essentially fail at any point.
absolutely. Let's see here. Mr. Bonkers with the €10 says, "Good night from the Netherlands. Currently 1:46 a.m. here. A dedicated tank watcher there, Mr. Bonkers. Appreciate you tuning in. Asking if Jack is already in Boca or on his way. He is not already in Boca Chica, but I believe he is likely preparing to head that way, especially if we get some confirmation that SN15 is getting ready to fly soon. I think he fully intends to be there, but appreciate the support there. Desmo asking, shout out to Zeus and Apollo, the best boys. Well, of course, the SpaceX robot dogs down in Boca Chica. Thanks for the support there. Matthew Duck says, great job, Michael, on capturing Delta IV Heavy. Appreciate the coverage on this busy week. So, Michael, as always, thanks for your coverage. You and Jack out in Vandenberg earlier this week.
No problem. I'm glad somebody appreciates coverage of a rocket other than Starship, so thank you for the support.
Absolutely. Let's see here. Thomas Anfang with the $20 super chat, thank you so much for the very generous support, says, as of tonight there will be 2 space stations. I propose we name the third Gateway the Collins Station. Rest in peace, Mike. I hope we hurry up so Artemis happens while we still have Apollo. Absolutely, Thomas. Thank you for the kind words there. And that is true. In addition to the International Space Station, the Chinese space station will officially begin tonight. And then, of course, the Lunar Gateway in the plans as well. So the number of space stations is increasing, which is very, very exciting to think about. I appreciate the support there. Bomb the Turtle asked, when Nosecone hop? Even if this test goes to failure, I'm not sure the Nosecone's going to hop per se. Unless the bottom fails and is pressurized, I guess it could hop its way up. But I appreciate the support there, Bob. And a question here, do we have any insight into what the plan is and how far into development of the Starship fairing is? It's a lot to remain if they're going to orbit soon. So talking about like the payload bay section, I'm assuming, we haven't really seen a whole lot other than sort of these types of nosecones, which are just prototype, the shape of nosecone, but it doesn't have any sort of payload bay or anything like that. So we haven't really seen much more than that, so I don't think we have a whole lot of insight on that. But for context, we know that they're trying to go to orbit as early as this summer, and unless their first test flights will not have any payload at all, which is completely possible, even if that is the case, not too long after that, they'll likely want to start carrying Starlink satellites as some of their initial payloads, and so they'll need that payload bay version. And so I would imagine they are at least partway into development and getting ready to build the first nose cones of that type. So yeah, that's all I can offer on that. We'll have to stay tuned and see when we spot the first signs of actual hardware to that end.
Yeah, the chomper is going to be the main thing to look for. Once we start seeing that Starship fairing or payload or nose cone, whatever you want to call it, with that section that can kind of fold out like a chomper mouth to release payloads. I'm not sure if there might be an interim solution before that, maybe a hole in the side of it or a door in the side of it that can deploy some Starlink satellites or something more simple. I'm not entirely sure, but I think the purpose of the first couple orbital launches will be mostly to test re-entry, not necessarily to deploy satellites.
Gotcha. Ronaldo asked, what type of notice did Mary receive? What does it say? So there was no. Normally, when there's a static fire, an alert notice goes out to the residents of the village, such as Mary, to warn them of the static fire because there's a possible overpressure event. No such notice was for this window, which is why we know it's not anything SN15 static fire related. So there's actually not really, there wasn't any notice for this. All we know is that the road has been closed and the pad has been cleared, and we have heard unconfirmed rumors that they might be testing this thing to even to failure tonight. So that's why we are live, because there's potential for some interesting testing to go on. But there was no notice. There's also no notice for tomorrow as far as a static fire or a flight attempt. So that's another sign pointing that we're not really close to any additional SN15 testing just yet.
Hopefully we just see the nose cone pass the point they were expecting it to withstand, and the entire thing just crumples like a tin can. That would be awesome.
Right, and I think that's kind of what we're expecting
That's
if
the
it
best
goes
case
well.
scenario. I think that's the maximum excitement scenario that we can hope for today within reason. I don't think it's going to go flying upwards, because you would think they're going to be pulling on it downwards, because the force of a launch is going to be, pushing down on the nose cone, not lifting it up. Because obviously I'm talking about the aerodynamic forces, not the forces of the Raptors underneath it, to be clear.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So this nose cone would be taking the brunt of the aerodynamic forces, whereas you have a thrust puck and the take section at the bottom, which takes the force of the Raptors. So this is probably a aerodynamic testing kind of situation. Got a question here from Rough Rider saying, will the Chinese space station be in a higher or lower orbit than the International Space Station? I am checking on that really quickly, but I believe lower. I will have the exact number here in just a second. Trying to find the exact. Yeah, okay. So the International Space Station orbits in a 418 by 422 kilometer orbit, which is still a low Earth orbit. However, the Chinese space station is planned for a 370 kilometer orbit, so slightly lower. It will also be slightly less inclined than the International Space Station. It doesn't have the inclination needed to be accessed from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, because it is a Chinese space station, not an international space station. So it's slightly less inclined so that the Chinese launch sites can access the station, and in a slightly lower orbit. A question here with the $20 super chat from PepMets. Thank you so much for the support. Great work. If there is a plan for Starship to launch from the Kennedy Space Center, do you think it would be advantageous to share the vehicle assembly building, lease a mobile launch platform from NASA? These are proven facilities capable to handle giant vehicles. It would be very cool to see Starships rolling out of the VAB one day. I think we would all agree how cool that would look. However, practically, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. SpaceX has already got a facility at the Kennedy Space Center at Roberts Road, which is being built up and will likely be in support of Starship production and operations at the Kennedy Space Center. Also, in order to access 39A, where the Starship launch pad is being built from the vehicle assembly building, you would have to use the crawlerway, which is actually blocked now by the horizontal integration facility that SpaceX uses for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy operations. So I don't think the VAB is going to be super feasible actually for Starship operations. They'll have their own facilities to work on.
Why would they want? Okay, here's a counter argument, Thomas.
Okay.
They're going to have to build a very large structure to stack these things. We have the high bay Boca Chica. Why not just use the VAB with an empty bay now because Omega got canceled?
Well, I mean, there's three empty bays now. There's 4 bays, and only one of them is going to be used for SLS.
Yeah,
so even
true.
with
There's
Omega, there were
one.
empty bays.
Okay, yeah. So there's plenty of space.
But so the question is, I mean, you would have to roll it out on. You might have to there's a side road that goes along the crawlerway to 39A. Like obviously, there's a road at the 39A, but I'm not sure it's wide enough for a Starship vehicle to roll out from the VAB. If there is, or if they could expand it to do so, then that would become feasible. You might also have to like tweak the fences around 39A and stuff, but that's relatively minor work. What we do know is that SpaceX is already preparing other facilities at the Kennedy Space Center, which would likely have the production and stacking purpose that you're looking at. that doesn't mean that they couldn't either pivot to VAB or have both facilities supporting in some way.
Well, I'm
So
saying like the ring sections, because right now we have the tents. So basically, Roberts Road would be the tents in Boca Chica. This is also like if they were to resume Starship activities at the Cape, which right now is on pause. This if they were to, well, there is some activity at Roberts Road. We don't know what it's for recently, but the actual building the launch pad at 39A has been paused for a while. But if it were all to start up again, what if there was ring production at Roberts Road, and then those rings were stacked in the current vehicle assembly building that's already built, and then they rolled it out to the launch pad from there? I don't know. That's complete speculation, but to me that makes more sense than building an entirely new high bay at Roberts Road.
that is a good point. What's going to happen is, especially now that SpaceX has won the Human Landing System program, there would be additional motivation to keep those operations at a NASA center such as Kennedy. So it is possible that we'll see a ramp up before too long of those facilities, and we might get a better idea as to what exactly their plans are for the Kennedy Space Center, because we know that is still, obviously Boca Chica is the focus, but last we heard, SpaceX is still planning to incorporate Kennedy Space Center at some point. So keeping an eye on that and seeing when that might spool back up is something to watch, and we'll see exactly what they'll use those facilities for. A super chat here, 2 a.m. here in Norway, so much for an early night. Thank you for this coverage. Myth, thank you so much for the support and for tuning in. It's going to be a long night of very exciting spaceflight stuff, and we're starting here in Boca Chica. Thank you so much for tuning in. Zach with the super chat says, hi, tell me something to cheer me up. Well, I can cheer you up by saying there's a lot of exciting spaceflight stuff going on right now, and you've tuned into the right place to see it. SpaceX is doing some testing of their next generation Starship rocket, which has so much potential to do so many cool missions going forward, and it's very cool to see history taking place to that end. We've also got Arianespace later tonight launching a rocket that failed the last time, and they're returning to flight so they can come back to launching more European missions as far as an international spaceflight effort. China is also increasing their efforts for human spaceflight by launching their first module of their next space station tonight. And then to top it all off, there's going to be a really cool SpaceX Falcon 9 launch at the end of the night. So tonight's got such a bunch of very exciting stuff to watch if you're a spaceflight fan. And so I hope that you can enjoy your evening and watch that stuff unfold, because it's all going to be really, really cool. A question here asking a question about engine design. Instead of having multiple engines, could you have one large combustion chamber with multiple gimbaled exhaust bells? There are a couple rocket engines that have a single combustion chamber and then multiple exhausts. The RD-180, the Russian engine, comes to mind, which is a single engine. It currently powers the Atlas V rocket. Also, the engines on the Soyuz launch vehicle all have 4 exhaust nozzles, but I believe they only have 1 combustion chamber on those as well. So it's one engine with multiple nozzles. I don't think the Soyuz nozzles are gimbalable. I believe they have vernier engines to do their steering, but the RD-180's 2 nozzles can gimbal, so that actually does exist out there. Depending on how exactly you design the engine, there could be benefits to that. It is more of a complicated engine in one unit instead of just having multiple, a single combustion chamber for a single exhaust bell, and just having entire engines that can be easily replaced rather than kind of mixing and matching those items. So as far as complexity goes, I think it's actually a benefit to have the 1 chamber and 1 exhaust bell design. But I could be missing some other benefits to the other design considerations. B Flying says, rest in peace, Michael's tripod. That's true. Michael's tripod did get hit by Delta IV.
It was a very soft fall over, or tip over. So everything is fine.
It's Dolphin asking, what are the chances of SN15 flying tomorrow? Almost 0. None of the residents of the village have not been told to prepare for a flight tomorrow. As far as we can tell, the flight termination system has not been prepared for flight, and the FAA has not given the green light for the flight as of earlier today. So therefore, there is no current indications that SN15 could fly tomorrow. We're more realistically looking at no earlier than Friday.
And the way things go, since they do not test on weekends generally, I mean, it's possible that could change, and we can see the first attempt at a weekend flight test, but generally they try to keep Boca Chica Beach open to the public, so I think odds are probably it might slip to next week, especially with that lack of FAA approval, and the weather on Friday is currently forecasted to be thunderstorms, so probably a decent chance it slips to next week, but right now the earliest possible flight date is Friday.
Also, Chet is correctly pointing out we should honestly toss this in until tonight, even though we're gonna kind of think of it as tomorrow morning. But very early tomorrow morning, we are also expecting to go live from the Kennedy Space Center for rollout of the first SLS core stage, which will power the Artemis 1 mission. We're waiting for an exact time on that, but early tomorrow morning, we will be going live for that event. It arrived on the Pegasus barge at the Kennedy Space Center yesterday. And that was, of course, shown on our fleet cam stream actually here. We showed that pulling into Port Canaveral and then pulling up to the Kennedy Space Center in the turn basin. Tomorrow, NASA is expecting to be able to roll that off and roll it into the vehicle assembly building, and we will have live coverage of that. So lots of very cool spaceflight stuff coming up, and NASASpaceflight will be covering it here on the YouTube channel as well as over at NASASpaceflight.com. So stay tuned for live coverage of all of that, and keep your notifications on if you haven't subscribed already and you think all this stuff is stuff that you'll be interested in. Feel free to hit subscribe, and you'll be notified when that stuff happens, and you'll see it up in your subscription feeds. So lots of cool stuff coming up. Absolutely.
Who remembers 5 years ago when something happened like once a month, maybe, if we were lucky?
Yeah.
I know I said that before on stream, but I am still mind blown by how much activity is happening in spaceflight every single week and every single day in 2021. We went from one SpaceX launch every few months to one SpaceX launch about every week.
Yeah.
And then all these other companies now also ramping up activities. It's really incredible.
It's certainly keeping us busy, that's for sure. Question here, how are they applying the downward force? So Mary did capture some images of hydraulic equipment being loaded inside the nose cone that we're looking at, this sort of SN12, this structural test article. So there is some sort of hydraulic work to pull the nose cone down, is what we believe. We don't know if there's other aspects to this testing, but we did spy that. So it is that looks like at least one mechanism with which they are testing the nose cone today.
I'm hoping the nose cone, if it does crumple, will crumple in a way that lets us see the inside. That would be cool.
Yeah, that would also be cool.
Because you'd think if there is some hydraulic system, if the top kind of fails, I don't see what's going to stop it from kind of coming down and kind of ripping everything apart. But we'll see what happens.
Okay, I also have right now some breaking Starship news, not perfectly related to this nose cone, but to the Starship sitting next to it. If we had any doubts that tomorrow was off the table, we've got to confirm now. The temporary flight restriction for tomorrow has been removed. So there is no temporary flight restriction in place for tomorrow. They have kept the temporary flight restriction for Friday and added one for Saturday. So I don't believe there's a road closure for Saturday. So currently the only day that has both a road closure and a flight restriction scheduled is this Friday, April 30th. Which again, we've been kind of anticipating to become the no earlier than date for SN15's flight, now making it official as they remove the flight restriction from tomorrow. So an update there, SN15 not flying till Friday at the earliest officially now.
And we have seen weekend temporary flight restrictions for pretty much all previous Starship flight test campaigns, but they never actually got a road closure. So I'm not going to believe that a weekend flight test is happening until the county signs off on a road closure for one, because SpaceX can go to the FAA and say we're going to do a rocket launch, give us temporary flight restriction pretty much any time, but the county is more concerned about making the locals happy with their beach access. So, and that's not to say that the county is not supportive of SpaceX. That is completely the opposite. The county has basically bent over backwards to make everything possible for SpaceX and Boca Chica. So SpaceX is very cooperative of the county. You will never see Elon complain about the county on Twitter. The county is extremely supportive, and SpaceX If the county asks them not to test on a weekend, we'll not test on a weekend.
Steve with the $5 super chat, thank you so much for the support there. And Raven with the new membership, thank you so much for joining on. Appreciate the support. A question here, do we believe that this test could have any relation to the crumple of the Nosecone during the SN-10 post-landing run? Seems then replays that the vertical forces were too high. I believe it would be unreasonable to expect the Nosecone not to crumple when the entire tank section explodes. I'm just gonna say that I don't think I would jump to any conclusions that there were any problems with the Nosecone structure, based on how the vehicle blew up after landing. I think the fact that it blew up in the first place is the much bigger issue. Doesn't mean that they're not completely unrelated, but I don't think that that kind of post-landing run would have prompted additional testing. I think that's pretty much what you would expect based on what happened with SN-10.
And again, if you're just joining us, they are doing a structural test of the Nosecone test article. We do not know if testing is underway yet. We may not know if testing is underway until we see a failure. We do think there's a chance they're going to test this thing to failure. So we might just suddenly see the Nosecone crumple without any warning. So keep your eyes staring at your screen, and hopefully we will see some action tonight. But like I mentioned at the start of the stream, we do not know what to expect. We may see nothing, but fingers crossed, we might get some excitement.
Chat asking how long this test could be, when will we know this test is happening? We really don't know. We haven't seen any testing like this before, so we're going off the fact that the pad has been cleared, so we know they're testing, or at least in the stance to begin testing, but we don't know how much of it will be visual. But we went live because there's this potential for it to end with a test to destruction, which we know would be visible, of course. So we're going to stay looking at the Nosecone and see what we can see. And in the meantime, we'll keep answering questions and providing updates on Starship testing. But we're not exactly sure what to expect here. Mary did just give us a quick note that the SpaceX drone has headed to the pad. So doing
That
some
could
sort
be a
of...
good sign. Yeah.
Yeah, that is usually a sign that they're testing something. They usually use a drone to take some different imagery or other measurements of the whatever they're testing. So clearly SpaceX actively doing something. So that's another thing to note. Colin asking about the possibility of making a modular landing pad using the transporter. After it lands, it could move the Starship to the tower. The landing pad is supposed to be right next to the orbital launch tower, which will have a stacking crane on it. So you don't really need a moving landing pad. The crane's going to be right there anyway.
There's a drone on the right. Going to
you
the
can
pad,
actually see
sorry.
the drone passing in front of the Nosecone there. But yeah, and also if they're still considering the catch of the Starship with a catch tower built into the launch tower, if that's still under consideration, then they'll need to be near the tower anyway. So don't think there's a need there. Taylor says, hope you're all having a good day. Hashtag Aries1 Fan Club. Thank you, Taylor. Appreciate the kind words. Aries1 Fan Club. Appreciate the support. And Jack's not here, so he can't disagree with me. Justin with the super chat says, in honor of Mike Collins. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate the support. Liam asking for some speculation. How do you guys think the SN-20 test will go? Full orbit and re-entry. I think it may have issues with control on re-entry to the belly flop. Love you guys. Thank you, Liam. I don't know. I'll open that up to the other folks here. Michael, any speculation for that first orbital flight, how that might go?
I'm going to say it will make orbit successfully, but it will not re-enter successfully. But I mean, even making orbit successfully would be a huge success, because it would mean the super heavy booster work. But I'm also still not convinced that SN-20 will actually ever go to orbit.
Mm-hmm.
We still have not seen a super heavy test article, yet alone a actual prototype vehicle that's going to fly, reach the launch pad. So I think there's a chance that the Starship program might just end up being too far ahead of the booster program, and they might have to take a couple more booster prototypes before they're ready to go to orbit. So I think they might, refine the design a couple more times and end up going to orbit with a booster after BN3. But we'll see what happens. The current plan is to launch BN3 to orbit, but if it starts slipping past BN3, they might just keep building more and more upgraded versions of Starship, and in which case, by the time they have a booster ready to go to orbit, they might have a better Starship than SN20 ready to launch with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Until we see that super heavy vehicle, it's going to be hard to put any legitimacy behind which Starship will go with it and what the timetable will be. If we want to broaden the question to when they are ready to make their first orbital launch attempt, I think getting to orbit actually has a pretty fair chance of going well. I think Starship, during its ascents on these test flights, have been rock solid. And then a super heavy booster, which should be a fairly, relatively simple build, and likely have a lot of engine redundancy on board. So if engine issues occur on the way up, which again hasn't happened on any of these Starship test flights so far during ascent, even if that were to come up, it might be able to still break it to orbit. So as far as recovery after the fact, recovering a super heavy has not been attempted before, so there's some risk there. And then Starship reentry would be another big risk point. But as far as reaching orbit, I think that's got a fair chance on their first attempt. What happens after that, we'll have to wait and see. And again, it's a test program, so as far as they get, they'll keep making progress, learning from it, and preparing to go farther with further testing. So. Karen with the super chat, thank you so much for the support. Appreciate it. And Alphabet with the super chat asking about, what we have seen is that hydraulic equipment go into the nosecone, and so I think you're right there, saying that it's likely pulling down on that cap on the top of the nosecone to apply tension and pull forces down to do the structural testing that we're seeing right now. I believe that's likely the explanation for what they're doing right now. Not confirmed, because again, we can only say based on what we've seen. But I think that is likely the most likely scenario for the testing. And again, it's possible that testing is underway at this exact moment, and we just can't really tell because there's not a whole lot to see. There's no obvious plumbing or anything, so it's hard to tell if this will even be pressurized or anything. It could very well be just that hydraulic structure. But that's why we're live to wait and see. Stevie with the new membership, thank you so much for the support. Appreciate it.
I guess I should mention that the road closure ends at 8 p.m. So we have seen them go past the road closure before, but if they are running on time, we should see whatever testing is going to happen, if anything visible, happen within the next 39 minutes.
Roseanne with the $50 super chat, thank you so much for the very generous support. Says, just happened upon this, I'm subscribed, wish I could figure out how to get notifications when you're live. Right next to that subscribe button there should be a little bell icon, and if you click that, you will get notifications when we publish our daily update videos or launch highlight videos that we've been posting recently, as well as every live stream. Actually recently, it's worth noting that we've been covering so many events. The last couple of days has been super busy. There is actually a limit as to how many notifications YouTube will push out for us. But under normal circumstances, you will get notifications for every stream. In the event that we get super busy like we have these last couple of days, you can also follow at NASASpaceflight on Twitter, which will put out notices every time we go live for testing or for a launch or anything like that. So that's another way to get notified when it's time to tune in and see some cool spaceflight stuff. But for the most part, YouTube notifications as well, right next to the subscribe button. Thank you so much for the very generous super chat support, and thanks for subscribing. Glad you're enjoying.
Yeah, I think we have the Delta 4 video, we had the Boca Chica daily video, and we had a very early morning static fire video from Boca Chica. So that was our 3 notification quota for today. But we're going to blow through it again tomorrow with our other 2 live streams coming up with Starlink and SLS and another daily video. So at some point, it's just better to follow us on Twitter to stay up to date. But I guess I should also say that these cameras are not going to be perfectly in sync. So if it does crumple, I'm going to have no warning to pick a camera. So just expect that when it crumples, you will see it happen on the left first and then the right camera, just the way our setup is. Normally we pick a single camera, but without any warning about when it's going to crumple today, that's not going to be possible. So we're going to stay on this side-by-side camera in case something happens on one of the angles that is not visible from the other angle.
Let's see here. John Clayton asking, do you think they might also be testing the upper flap mounts for stresses related to trying to catch a Starship by some sort of reinforced upper flaps? Possible, but again, we see that cap kind of attached to the very tip of the nose cone, so I think it's more likely they're testing the overall nose cone structure. That doesn't mean that it's not related to testing if it could be caught, or testing aerodynamic forces or something like that. There's a lot of different options, but it doesn't look like they're testing just those mounts. It looks like they're kind of testing the overall structure. So, but again, that's just what I'm gonna speculate based on what we've seen. Can't rule out other options. Maybe after the fact we'll get some word from Elon Musk or something saying what exactly was going on and maybe learn something from that. But yeah, that's kind of what we've got so far. So sorry for not having a whole lot of details, but a lot of this is very classic Texas tank watching. We don't really know exactly what's going on, but we know watching it could get exciting, so we're gonna go live and we're gonna see what happens. Justin asking, isn't Starship supposed to be able to make orbit single stage with no payload? Close. It's supposed to make orbit with no payload and no recovery hardware. So the first orbital, or any orbital attempt of Starship, is going to be with a super heavy booster to enable recovery and of course enable actually carrying payloads. John with a $20 super chat, thank you so much. Says, love the updates and live feeds. My little girl and I always look forward to starting an NER day with NSF's and Mary's videos. Absolutely, John, thank you so much for the support and for sharing it with your little girl as well. We're glad you both enjoy the coverage, and it's some really exciting spaceflight stuff that we get to share with everybody. So we're glad you're enjoying it, and we appreciate the kind words and the support. And Roseanne with the update says, yes, just clicked it. So Roseanne, thank you so much for the update and for the other super chat. Glad you found it. Appreciate the support as always.
And you do not need to spend $10 to tell us that. But thank you.
Yeah, you really didn't have the super chat to tell us that, but we appreciate the very generous support. Wilson, thank you for the new membership. Appreciate it. And PepMets with another super chat here says, for certain variants of Starship, would SpaceX consider using SRBs, solid rocket boosters, to help with ascent? It may simplify things in that you will not need to get as many Raptors to get into orbit, reducing points of failure. Reducing the number of Raptors, but increasing the number of solid rocket boosters does not really reduce your points of failure. Liquid engines can be shut down when they malfunction, solid boosters cannot. And that's a whole nother system that SpaceX would have to develop, unless they were going to buy solid boosters from a provider, and even then, they would then have to adapt the super heavy booster to have boosters on the side and stuff like that. So that's definitely something that I think we can rule out. SpaceX is also, at least Elon has said, he personally is not a fan of solid fueled motors, likes to keep everything liquid fueled for reliability reasons. So I don't think SpaceX is going to consider that at any point. And Rob Crawford asks, any indication if it's for internal or external forces? Since that cap is mounted to the outside, and again, we believe it's going to be pulled down by that hydraulic ram that they put in, I would guess external forces, but I don't know, unless that cap is not what the hydraulic equipment is attached to, and there is internal force pushing outward is what they're testing, I would guess it's external forces, but I could be wrong there. If they were testing internal forces, though, they could also just pressurize it, unless they're doing some really weird internal force testing. So if I had to guess, external forces based on sort of the structure at the very, very top, but other than that, there's not really a whole lot of indication as to more detail than that. And Tigran with the super chat, thank you so much for the support, appreciate it. And the super chat here, Starship with the booster and the orbital launch table will be so Falcon big. You've got a good point there, appreciate the support. Justin points out that at some point there will be a docking port at that part of the Nosecone, especially for the human landing system Starship variant. So possible this is related to some sort of forces on the Nosecone, since they might have to tweak that for a docking port, but I don't really know. That's a good hypothesis, but you can't confirm or deny whether that's true or not. We don't really know for sure, but that's a good observation. And chat asking about any SN15 updates. We can report that the SN15 test flight is no earlier than Friday because the flight restrictions for tomorrow have been removed. So the next day that has road closures and flight restrictions is Friday. There's also other items that need to take place before that, including flight termination system installment and FAA approval and things like that. Because again, those flight restrictions do not necessarily indicate that the FAA has approved the flight. They usually file those restrictions in advance, even before the official green light is given. So, no earlier than Friday, but could slip further. And Elevator Man says, do you guys have more confidence in SN15 than previous ones? I mean, every Starship should, in theory, get farther than the ones before it, right? So, yeah, I think, yeah. I mean, so here's the problem. Everyone since SN8, I've said, oh yeah, the next one's gonna land, and then it didn't land. And our SN10 landed with an asterisk because it blew up afterwards, because it landed too hard. So I wouldn't exactly call that a successful landing, but I would say confidence is rising with every one. Eventually, they've got to nail it, and SN15 should have the best chance of any of the ones that came before it. So, I don't know. Michael, any thoughts on SN15's chances?
I have more confidence in SN15, but I also thought that SN10 and 11 were both going to land. I mean, SN10 obviously did land, but I'm not sure you can really call that a perfect landing based on how hard it landed, but I'm going to stop saying that I think the next Starship is going to land. I'm just going to say that I think SN15 has a better chance.
Right. Babinski, who I believe is actually Justin Davenport, one of our writers here at NASASpaceflight. How's it going, Justin? Asking, wondering if there's a header tank in the Nosecone, if that's what they're testing. Michael, did we see any sort of header tank structure in this Nosecone?
Not really. The lift, that black cap is where the header tank should be, so they've put that cap in place of the header tank.
Gotcha. And Steven with the question here, will the sea level raptors only need to be on the point-to-point variant? I don't see a need for them off of Earth. So, of course, the Super Heavy booster will have exclusively the sea level raptors, only going to operate in the dense part of Earth's atmosphere down to sea level, so no need for any vacuum raptors there. On the Starship variants, however, keep in mind that not only you'll need the vacuum raptors, obviously for maneuvering in space, but you'll also need the sea level raptors for landing. Both on Earth, obviously when you're landing at sea level, obviously you're going to want a sea level optimized Raptor for that. But even if you're landing on Mars, or even if you're doing maneuvering out in space, if you need gimbal authority, you need the sea level version of Raptor because the vacuum Raptors do not have gimbal authority. They do not pivot to help steer the vehicle, only the sea level do. So sea level Raptors are going to be, I think, on all the Starship variants, even if it's not the point-to-point ones. Any Starship that's going to return to Earth at any point needs to be able to land here at sea level, so they're going to need sea level Raptors for that. And even landing on the Moon or Mars, on Mars, even though it's closer to vacuum than sea level conditions at the surface of Mars, you'll still want those sea level Raptors operating at slightly less efficiency because of the conditions, but they give you that gimbal authority, which is very important. Landing on the moon, during the initial ascent, you're going to be using those Raptor engines, and you might need that gimbal authority anyway, even though you'll like the efficiency of the vacuum engines. Of course, the final descent will be those thrusters higher up on the vehicle for a nice soft landing and preventing any regolith problems. But sea level Raptors, I think, are going to be across all the different variants regardless. I believe this is Ian Logan saying, first chat since finding your channel, what are your guys' thoughts on the advancements in spaceflight and the future to traveling to the moon, to the Mars and moon and back? Well, it's been a while since there's been, obviously it's been a while since the Apollo program, the last time we sent people to the moon and anything beyond low Earth orbit. But along the way, there's been a lot of different plans on how to do that. And it's always been an idea, how can we have sort of permanent human presence beyond low Earth orbit? We've had humans living in space continuously for over 20 years now on the International Space Station, which is a huge accomplishment, and that's going to continue going. But we're now looking to kind of expand that to saying we've had people living in lunar orbit on Gateway since whatever year. We're going to have people living under the surface of the moon permanently and consistently, since whenever, as soon as we can establish that capability. And then the same thing out to Mars and possibly even other destinations. Those plans are not super new, but the plans have changed a whole lot. Today, I think what we're seeing is that's starting to converge as far as conceptual plans and actual hardware that can meet those plans. You look at a vehicle like Starship that has a lot of capability and is getting much farther in development than other vehicles have done for similar purposes. And it's got the ability to really enable those kind of missions. So Starship is a huge part of that. Also, other effects of sort of SpaceX technologies, reusable launch vehicles, and just another pivot to even heavier lift launch vehicles. Other companies are building heavier and heavier lifting vehicles. You have the Space Launch System, which will launch crew to deep space, and then you've got sort of commercially operated vehicles in New Glenn and Vulcan and things like that. So, and that's just in the United States. Other countries are coming up with their own plans as well. So, all of those things being considered, it is a very exciting time to be involved in spaceflight, because there's a lot of new vehicles and a lot of new plans that are feeling a lot more feasible than some of the more conceptual plans we've had in the past few years. The idea of sending people to deep space, the moon and Mars and beyond, and then coming back to Earth and having that capability is really exciting, and we're getting close to realizing it. So that's why we're all here. We're all here to talk about it and to celebrate that and root everyone on and cheer everyone on, and hope that it's successful, because there's a lot of really good benefit for people living on Earth and the people who will live beyond if we can do that. So it's a very, very exciting time to follow spaceflight stuff.
And if you're just joining us, just a reminder that we are currently looking at the Nosecone test article. We do not know if we're going to see anything or something this evening, but there is a chance that if they do a test to failure, we may see it crumple. So we are crossing our fingers. You might get some action this evening. If it does happen, it's likely going to happen without warning. So keep your eyes pointed at your screen, and hopefully we will see some excitement sometime soon. The road closure does last until 8 p.m. Central Time, but we have seen SpaceX go past the closure in the past, so that's not a hard limit, but hopefully that this test does happen and happens in the next 20 minutes or so. And also, the sun's going to go down if it goes past 8 p.m. So, fingers crossed, the test happens in good lighting conditions and that we get to see some visual action.
A question here saying, when Starship fuels up, so much vapor is expelled when venting takes place. Can this vapor be captured and recycled? Love to you all. Thank you. Thank you for the kind words in the super chat there, Darlene. SpaceX is working on this to a certain extent. They've actually started recapturing methane, which would have normally been vented from the vehicle. And actually, the ground equipment, in order to keep methane stored stably, needs to be venting a little bit. And they used to have something called a flare stack that would actually burn the methane off, so we weren't releasing pure methane into the atmosphere. Both from an environmental standpoint and a safety standpoint, that's not a great thing. They actually have a new piece of equipment, or relatively new piece of equipment, called a recondenser, which takes that gaseous methane and recondenses it back into liquid form. And they can keep that in the storage tanks and keep using it. So they've made some advancements to that. They're also going to have plans to take similar technology to capture oxygen from the atmosphere and condense that into liquid oxygen for their propellants. Not only is that useful for just producing those propellants, but it's also important for refueling once you get to somewhere like Mars, where you want to refuel using resources in that atmosphere, which was actually recently demonstrated with the MOXIE experiment on the Perseverance rover, NASA's rover, producing a little bit of oxygen from Mars's atmosphere earlier, I think. I don't know if that was this week or last week, a few days ago. So that's a technology that's being developed, and yeah, so recapturing those kind of vapors is something SpaceX and other groups are actively working on, because that's would be a huge step forward in technology. And Pep Metz with yet another super chat. Thank you so much for all the support on the stream here. Just a little more to support what you do with Starship, SLS, Vulcan, Dream Chaser, and everything else. It's really a fun time to see all the different vehicles and watching tech evolve. Absolutely, and that's just some of the vehicles we're all excited to see coming down the line. So appreciate all of the support, and we're glad you're enjoying the coverage as much as we enjoy covering it. 13th Andy, thank you for the super chats. Also Bob Brown with the webinar super chat. If Jack was here, he would surely have a response. Appreciate the support there. Dean asking, do you think the tip of the Nosecone is to see how structurally good it would be for a docking system, refueling, etc.? So important to note that refueling would take place at the base of the vehicle, the same place where those docking or the fueling valves used to refuel it on the launch mount are. Would have a docking adapter to refuel Starship on orbit, so that wouldn't be related to the nose cone per se. However, there is a non-zero chance that this testing could be related to the docking port for actually people and cargo passing into and out of the vehicle when it's docked to Orion or the Lunar Gateway or whatever other vehicles Starship may dock to in the future under Human Landing System, Artemis program, or other programs. That is certainly possible, but we don't know for sure. That is a reasonable bit of speculation. Rough House with the new membership, thank you so much for the support. Kim Pimwell with the $20 super chat, thank you so much for the very generous support. Tryfly with a super chat as well, and Christopher with a super chat. Thank you all so much for all of the support. We greatly appreciate it, and it allows us to bring you this live coverage. A super chat here saying, I don't think they will try an SN-15 launch in the same news cycle as the Crew 1 landing. A failure of SN-15 would taint the Crew 1 news. I disagree, simply because right before Demo 2, SpaceX spectacularly blew up a Starship prototype the day before they launched the first ever crewed mission on Crew Dragon. So I don't think SpaceX is super concerned about that. They weren't during that, and honestly, the Demo 2 news was not really overshadowed by the Starship views. There were a couple of news outlets that tried to make a connection with it too. All the spaceflight news outlets know how separate the programs were, and for the most part, I think news kind of maintained separate and showed the distinction between an experimental test program and operational human spaceflight missions. So I don't think that's really a problem. Don't think SpaceX would worry about that.
And Mary reports that another drone is heading to the pad. And normally, I am not too sure how much of an indication the drones give us, but I think for today's test, it's about all we have to go off of. But a drone being at the pad means they're hopefully there to observe something happen. So, fingers crossed, it could be a sign that they might try to test this thing to failure sometime soon. But I agree with you, Thomas. I don't think Elon, especially, is too concerned about PR. He recently tweeted to somebody who's asking about why he does not hire a Tesla person to handle PR, and he said that he trusts the public to make the right opinions, essentially. So I think Elon is not going to hold up his test campaign over fear of bad news in the media.
Darwin with the super chat asking, do you guys think Starship will have a good-looking interior like the ones we've seen in renders, or will it look more like the interior of the International Space Station? I would probably venture to guess that it will be more similar to like the Crew Dragon interior, very clean and modern. Keep in mind that Starship will not only serve customers like NASA, by the way. A quick brief view of the drone just to the right of the bottom of SN15. You can see the drone flying around. But I'd bet money that the Starship interior will look very clean and modern, just like Crew Dragon, just because Starship's going to act as sort of a commercial vehicle for non-government astronauts as well. And part of the appeal for that is going to want to fly on a nice futuristic-looking spaceship. So I would bet that the interior is going to look really, really nice. And I can't wait to see what it'll look like. Hopefully we get some glimpses soon. And Kim with the super chat saying, thanks for the great SpaceX content. Since the forward flaps look attached to the rig, how do you think they are part of do you think they're part of what's being tested? There are some sort of structures attached to where those fins would normally be, so non-zero chance they're related. I'm still stuck on that cap at the top, which is clearly also part of the testing. So maybe they're testing a couple different things with this sort of setup, not sure. But it's possible the fins are also part of it. Again, there's been speculation that this is related to trying to catch Starship and stuff like that. Who knows? But we'll have to really wait and see, and maybe hear some news from Elon or something after the test to get some more detail. Right now, we're waiting to see what happens. Chat is saying they've seen some movement. What's chat?
Which part? I'm doing an A/B test, trying to figure it out.
Michael's on the A/B test. And if you're just joining us, we really don't know what to expect with this test. We know some sort of structural testing with this test article, and it could end with a test of destruction, which could end, dramatically. So we're live taking a look at what exactly is going on, but we're not sure exactly what we'll see.
I think it's just lighting and the sun going down. But there is like a change in the reflection, but I don't see like a dent or something for him. Unless I'm looking in the wrong place.
So really quick, we're going to keep our live coverage going here, but to keep in mind we've got another event that NASASpaceflight also has to cover live later tonight, and well, I'm the one tasked with doing so I'm going to start driving to Cape Canaveral here. Really quick though, I believe we're going to rotate in another voice here. Das, you here?
I am here, Thomas. I am here to take over so you can get in the car and drive down to the Cape.
That's what I'm going to do. So thank you all so much. Thomas Burkhardt for NASASpaceflight, and Das is going to be here, take my place here. Michael's going to hang out as well, I think. And I think I'll see you all in a couple hours from Cape Canaveral, but to continue our live coverage from Boca Chica, Das and Michael, it's all on you.
All right, well, drive safe down there, Thomas. Thanks for holding that down there for us.
Sounds good. Talk to you guys in a couple hours.
Good deal. Chat, did I miss anything? Was there anything obvious that happened while I actually ran downstairs to get some dinner so I could take over from Thomas here, but did anything at all change?
I mean, the sun has gone down almost. That's about it.
The sun has gone down and the wind seems to still be blowing, but nobody's crumpled that nose cone like a tin can or anything, huh?
No, they're waiting for Thomas to go, I guess, hopefully.
How long do we have in the window? Isn't the window theoretically supposed to be closing pretty soon here?
Yeah, so they might go over the window slightly, but fingers crossed. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen soon.
Huh. Well, I've been working on that audio. Remember the microphone that we had locally there with Danger Cam? I've been working on trying to stabilize that and get some more data on it. And I can tell you, listening to that, there's nothing to hear. So there's no venting noises, there's no crumpling noises, there's no screeching metal noises or anything like that. I've been working on that microphone. It's still not quite stable enough to be piped into here, but you haven't missed anything. And that's why I've been being a little quiet here while Thomas was holding down the fort. But we're going to continue hanging out and watching what's going on. And you know what's going to happen. I'm going to be like reading a super chat or something, then I'm going to look back at the nose cone and it's going to be gone. I'm going to say, wait, what? So I think I am going to try to keep going through a couple super chats here, and we can put some questions in the queue as well, because it's not just the super chat questions we get, and I'll just keep on keeping on. Sound good, Michael?
Sounds good.
All right. Well, hey, let's see here. Ray Bellows says something about liking our opinions about China landing on the moon. There must have been a discussion there that I missed concerning China landing on the moon, but they've already landed a lander with a little rover, like a RC car style rover on the far side of the moon, if I'm not mistaken. So always interesting to keep up with what's going on there. Also, Christopher coming through as well, saying, any ideas on how they plan to use the Nosecone rig? I'm thinking maybe using the crane and pulley system, like this Nosecone rig?
The cars are going back to the pad. It is over.
Are they really?
Mary just said in our back channel, so we don't know if they actually tested because there's nothing for us to see, but clearly it was not tested a failure or whatever happened, but we'll have to wait and see if Elon tweets or if we hear anything, but there go the cars, the pad is open, so maybe they just ran out of time, I don't know for sure, but as we said at the beginning of the stream, there was a chance that this would happen and we would not see much, but just in case it did crumple, we did go live.
Huh. Well, right now, is it just those two vehicles, that truck and the chase car there?
Yeah, I think so.
Interesting. So what is our plan? I mean, we still have some time left in the window. Do we think that there's any possibility these are just employees going to look at something and they're not done yet? I mean, the nose cone is still there and it looks fine to me.
Mary, I think, said that the barricade was being moved, but we'll see if they fully open the road. If they fully open the road. Mary's also saying that Starship food is heading to the pad, so that's going to be the end of testing today, I think.
Gotcha. So, Mary's saying Starship food, meaning those big tankers, either liquid oxygen, liquid nitrogen, liquid methane, those big tanker trucks being taken out to the pad. We'll probably see those on the camera here shortly. And I can actually hear vehicles driving on the other microphone as well. I'm going to stop talking about what I can hear on that microphone. I'm just getting confused as to what I'm hearing. So if that's the case, and they've allowed those big tankers to go back out to the pad, that probably means they're done for the night, right?
Yeah, I think we can probably start wrapping up here. But again, we went live in case something exciting happened. We don't know if they actually tested or not. They could have tested, and it could have been a success. They could have tested, and something came up, and they had to abort. They could have had another issue and not actually tested at all. We don't know.
I mean, it looks the same to me. I didn't see any massive difference in the before and after. I was trying to scroll the stream back and forward and stuff. There go the trucks right there. So that is, what do we think those are? Are those nitrogen or are those?
Yeah, I think the label is green.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to see.
If it's green, it's nitrogen.
Mary might have had a better view of those than we've got here, so they need to wash the back off of that one. But clearly with those vehicles, those tanker trucks headed to the pad, there's probably not going to be anything else to see. Mary says nitrogen and methane for sure. Good deal. So with those vehicles headed to the pad, there's probably not going to be anything else. See, that's a red label right there.
Methane.
Yeah. So TK032, that's a methane truck, and the first three looked like they were nitrogen trucks. Let's see what color the label is on that one. That looks like a red label as well, doesn't it?
Yep. So 3 nitrogen and 2 methane.
Yeah. The inert gases or inert cargoes, like the nitrogen would get a green label, those like diamond labels that have the number on them. And more dangerous gases, things that are flammable, will get red labels. So that's what we were looking at, the label colors there. But 5 trucks total heading out to the test site to refuel some of that ground service tanks where they store the stuff. And not looking like we're going to have anything else to see here tonight, huh?
Nope. So I think we can clear out our super chat queue and wrap it up.
Cool. I can speed around the super chats really quickly and make sure we didn't miss anything. Daniel Stein says, Michael, rant request. Are you supposed to rant about something?
You have to give me a topic.
I don't know what you're supposed to rant about. It just says Michael rant request.
I don't know either, but I can't rant without a topic, so.
You can't just rant about nothing. Well, Daniel Stein, one way or the other, thank you for the $10 there. Since we're running these and there's no topic included with your request, we're going to keep on keeping on. We've got A-Train who said, with all the technologies you've mentioned, one I haven't seen much about is Bigelow's Aerospace is inflatable module. Any news or test results from ISS? So Bigelow Aerospace doesn't have an inflatable module. They have an expendable module, but no inflatable module. I did a show with some people from Bigelow, and they were very specific not to call it inflatable. It is expendable module, but they did have that beam, the Bigelow expandable activity module that got delivered up to the ISS, and I think it worked, and I think it's a storage closet now. They were watching it, and it's still there. I think they're just storing stuff, and I haven't heard anything else. Have you?
It got extended, so NASA was happy with the performance. They extended it, and then Bigelow went bankrupt. So, or at least I don't know if they went bankrupt, but they have ceased operations.
Closed down,
for now.
yeah.
They've closed down shop, so Bigelow is not currently, at least as far as we know, building any new hardware.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Dave R., can anyone explain why they built a large berm, and can we name it Bernie Sanders? So that's the berm that's visible here, or is that... No, that's the berm in the background, right? To the right-hand side?
The new one on the far right, probably.
Yeah, back behind Pad B. That empty structure there is suborbital Pad B, and there's that hill-looking thing behind it. That's the berm. Protecting things, usually. Not exactly sure what they're trying to protect, but sometimes you'll try to deflect explosions. Sometimes you'll have to want to retain spills. I don't think that this is a circular one like you'll see at the refineries or oil fields where they're trying to retain a liquid that would spill. I don't know that would even make any sense. So I would imagine this is some sort of protection for probably the orbital launch platform and GSC over there for when something lands on the landing pad. Isn't that berm between the landing pad and the OLP?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So I bet you that is to protect and deflect energy coming from landings over at the landing pad so that you don't get that impact on the side of the OLP and the various equipment over there. That's my guess based on the position and size of that thing. Not sure if we'd call it Bernie Sanders or not. I'm not sure I'm sold on that. Wade Arency says wind crunch. Apparently not tonight since the pad is open and we did not see a crunch. Here's one from Pompalock saying, rest in peace, Michael Collins and Recetus. Thank you for that, Pompalock. Appreciate you. Madeline Howerwin as well with the $2. Thank you, Madeline. And Mosh Berkowitz says, thanks for all the videos. You're welcome, Mosh. We will continue to do videos as long as people keep clicking on them and watching them. So we appreciate your support there. And then Musical Wolves ending the queue here saying, after subscribing, you sometimes have to select all notifications instead of the default personalized. Oh, you're talking about the Go Live notifications. We are aware that this live stream did not have a notification because there's been too much going on. So if you didn't get the notification for this specific stream, that's to be expected. We've been doing too many things, too many videos, too many live streams, and YouTube only lets you do so many per, I guess, 24-hour period, like rolling 24 hours. So there was no notification for this. Like we mentioned earlier, make sure you follow on Twitter at NASASpaceflight to make sure that you get those notifications. You know something? Michael does a fantastic job as well. Just about every single time we go live, he'll do like an artisanal handcrafted tweet with a link to the URL, with a link to the stream in it. So Michael is at NextSpaceflight on Twitter, and the official main account is at NASASpaceflight. So just type in NextSpaceflight and then change the next to NASA and follow both those accounts, and you'll get notifications whenever we go live with something to show. But that ends the Super Chat queue. And I do believe now that the road is looking like it's open and those big trucks have gone out to the pad, that is going to end our coverage. Did I miss anything else there, Michael?
I don't think so.
Somebody said Bernie Sanders will redistribute 99% of the flames and debris. Wants to make sure they've evenly distributed the flames and debris. Nice question. So anyways, hey, folks, also for the people that are regular members here as well, thank you all so much for joining us. We've got the super chats and stuff that come through on live streams, but we also have the people who are regular members supporting us on a monthly basis. So if you've joined as a pad rat or Capcom or mission specialist or whichever one, I don't think there's a mission specialist one, is there? No, there's not. If you've joined at whatever level, we appreciate the support from the regular members as well. I know that doesn't post up notifications every live stream or anything like that, but y'all definitely make it possible for us to bring you coverage like this as well. Even when, like tonight, there's nothing to see. I feel like we should write a song about this, and you know, the Nosecone is still there. So for now, we will be going ahead and spooling down this live coverage. Michael, what time are we going live for Starlink?
Good question. Let me check my schedule.
Yeah, I'm going to see the schedule too. Things. I don't see it in the schedule. Later.
Well, later today, sometime before launch.
Yeah, coming up shortly here, probably about an hour or about 45 minutes before Starlink is supposed to launch, we're going to go live again from Cape Canaveral. That's where Thomas had to go. He had to pack it up and drive down to the Cape with the stream rig to bring live coverage of tonight's Starlink launch. And I'm talking really slowly there so we can say what time that Starlink launch is scheduled for.
I know I saw it, but we've had so many messages go by.
Yeah, I'm actually going to nextspaceflight.com, and I can see that that is scheduled for 3:44 UTC tonight.
Oh, the launch schedule, yes.
Yeah, the launch schedule.
3:44 UTC, or 11:44 p.m. Eastern Time, or 8:44 p.m. Pacific Time is the time of the Starlink launch.
For the actual launch, and we'll usually go live 45 minutes to an hour before that. So we will be back for that stream, and then early in the morning, I'm supposed to roll out around 4 a.m. Chris will be down there even earlier, but we were going to be watching the move of the Artemis 1 core stage from the barge Pegasus that we saw come in to the turning basin over there all the way into the VAB early in the morning. So we've got a special spot for a live stream camera there at Kennedy Space Center, and we'll be watching them roll out that massive first stage on its way to the VAB. But that'll be early tomorrow morning. So in the next 12 hours, 2 more live streams expected. For now, there's not going to be anything else to see here at Boca Chica. They have opened the road. The trucks are back out there, so they're not going to do anything dangerous. And so the NASA spaceflight team will be closing things down here. Massive thanks to Mary. She's got this camera feed here. She rolled out to help bring live coverage of what's going on at Boca Chica, also every single day with the daily videos. So make sure you watch those if you're interested in what's going on at Boca Chica. Follow her on Twitter as well, at Boca Chica Gal. And then also back in the studio, we had Thomas there doing some commentary for just a little bit. We'll be hearing from him some more this evening as he does the Starlink shindig. And then Michael Baylor as well. Michael, thank you for holding it down here on this one.
Yeah, I clearly need to fix the system because it is not reliable enough. But there you go, Thomas, and then myself. There's information. Follow us on Twitter if you want. And I think we will see you all in an hour or so, maybe 2 hours.
Yeah, something like that. So, folks, from NASA Spaceflight, I'm not controlling the live stream right now. Michael is, but whatever. I'm still sitting in my same chair. I'm John Galloway, and we will see you nerds later. Thanks for joining us, and we will be back for the Starlink launch in about an hour. Catch you later, nerds.
Chamber pressure looks good. Following up. Roger, roger, Atlantic. Water towers, fly! Flight outside, FD off. FD off.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.